The thing about humans, as I learned far too late, is that they treat their planet's deadliest creatures like pets. My name is Vorthak, senior xenobiologist for the Galactic Conservation Coalition, and I've spent 300 cycles cataloging dangerous fauna across 47 worlds. I've documented the razor-spined serpents of Kellogg's Prime, survived an encounter with the void sharks of Terminus 9, and once watched a pack of crystal predators tear through reinforced titanium like it was wet paper. I thought I'd seen everything. Then I met Markus Vex. The assignment seemed straightforward enough. Earth had recently joined the coalition, and they needed someone to assess their wildlife preservation protocols. Standard procedure, really. Show up, review their facilities, file a report, collect my bonus, and move on to the next planet. Easy. I should have known better when the shuttle pilot, a cheerful human woman named Rita, laughed at my 3-layer biohazard suit. "Oh honey," she said, adjusting her flimsy cotton shirt. "You're gonna roast in that thing. Protocol dictates proper protective equipment when visiting Class 4 predator habitats." I replied stiffly, my translator rendering my clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless English. She just smiled. Humans do that a lot, I've noticed. Smile when things don't make sense. The facility was located in what humans call Montana, a region of North America characterized by vast grasslands, dense forests, and apparently, an alarming number of creatures that could kill you. The building itself looked disturbingly casual. No force fields, no plasma barriers, just wood and glass and some chain-link fencing that wouldn't stop a determined house pet from my homeworld. Markus Vex met me at the entrance. Tall for a human, maybe 6.5 feet, with skin darkened by their sun and arms covered in faded markings they call tattoos. He wore nothing but denim pants, heavy boots, and a sleeveless shirt that said, "Wildlife, Rehabilitation and Rescue" across the chest. "You must be Vorthak." He extended his hand, that bizarre human greeting where they grab each other's appendages and shake them. I'd been briefed about this. "Welcome to the center. Sorry about the heat. We're having a real scorcher today." I checked my suit's external temperature reading, 28 degrees Celsius, barely above freezing by galactic standards. I was already sweating inside my protective gear. "Thank you for accommodating this inspection," I said formally. "Shall we begin?" "Absolutely. Fair warning though, it's feeding time. Things might get a little loud." Loud didn't begin to cover it. The first enclosure housed what Markus called grizzly bears. Massive creatures, easily 400 kilograms of muscle, claws and teeth. They stood on their hind legs, towering over us, and roared with enough force that I felt it in my secondary chest cavity. "Magnificent, aren't they?" Markus said, absolutely beaming. "That big guy. There is Brutus. Found him as a cub with a broken leg. Poachers had killed his mother. And you kept him." I stared at the creature. It could tear through my suit and 3 more layers of armor without breaking a sweat. "This is a Class 5 apex predator." "Well, yeah, but he's also a sweetheart. Loves apples. Here, watch this." Markus made a strange chirping sound, and the bear, this mountain of death and destruction, ambled over to the fence. Markus tossed an apple through the barrier, and Brutus caught it with surprising delicacy, munching happily. I made frantic notes on my datapad. This is highly irregular. The creature should be exhibiting aggressive territorial behavior, not accepting food offerings like some domesticated herd animal. "Bears are actually pretty chill if you treat them right," Markus said, as if this explained anything. "Come on, I want to show you the wolves." The wolves were somehow worse. A pack of them, 11 in total, with eyes that tracked every movement and teeth designed for one purpose only, killing. They circled their enclosure with predatory grace, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. Markus opened the gate and walked right in. "Wait, stop, what are you doing?" I practically shrieked, my translator struggling with the pitch of my panic. "Meeting the pack," he called back over his shoulder. "They get anxious if I don't spend time with them every day." I watched, mandibles hanging open, as 11 apex predators surrounded this insane human. They didn't attack. They didn't even growl. The largest one, a female with gray-streaked fur, walked up to Markus and pressed her head against his chest. He scratched behind her ears. "This is Luna," he said casually, as if he wasn't seconds away from being torn apart. She's the alpha. Smart as a whip and twice as stubborn. Humans, I managed to say, my voice shaking, are clinically insane. Markus laughed. Actually laughed. You haven't even met the badgers yet. Oh, I wish he'd been joking. The badger enclosure was smaller than the others, which made sense given the creature's size. Maybe 12 kilograms. Black and white fur, short legs, and a face that looked perpetually annoyed. It was watching us with dark, beady eyes that promised violence. Now this guy, Markus said, his voice taking on a note of genuine respect, is why I wanted you here. This creature. I scanned it with my datapad. It's barely larger than a standard nutrition pack. Surely this isn't dangerous? That right there is a honey badger. Real name is Rattel, but everyone calls them honey badgers because they love raiding beehives for honey. And when I say nothing stops them, I mean nothing. I pulled up the data. According to galactic classification systems, this should be a Class 2 threat at most, minimal danger to sentient life. Your classification system, Markus said, grinning like a madman. Never met a honey badger. He proceeded to tell me about honey badgers, how they attack creatures 50 times their size, how they've been recorded fighting off lions, hyenas, and entire packs of wild dogs, how they have skins so thick and loose that even if something bites them, they can twist around inside their own hide and counterattack, how they're immune to most venoms, including cobra and viper bites, how they can eat poisonous snakes for breakfast and sleep off the effects in a few hours. They also hold grudges, Markus added. A honey badger doesn't forget, and it sure as hell doesn't forgive. This is impossible, I muttered, frantically updating my notes. A creature this size with these capabilities should not exist. The energy expenditure alone would require it to consume 3 times its body weight daily. Yeah, they eat a lot, Markus agreed cheerfully. They also don't care about anything. I've watched this guy take on a rattlesnake, get bitten twice, kill the snake, eat it, take a nap, and then dig up its nest to eat the eggs, all before lunch. The badger made a sound like a chainsaw trying to start. I later learned this was called chattering, and it meant the badger was irritated. Given what I just heard, I decided to take several steps back. His name is Napoleon, Markus said. Found him injured on a ranch. The rancher wanted to shoot him because he'd been killing chickens. I offered to take him instead. And now you keep him in this cage. Enclosure, Markus corrected. And yes, he can't be released back into the wild because he's too comfortable around humans now. He'd end up dead within a week. The badger, Napoleon, fixed me with a stare that suggested he knew exactly what we were saying and resented every word. I checked the enclosure security. Standard chain link, reinforced posts, a simple lock mechanism. For a supposedly dangerous creature, the security seemed laughably inadequate. I was about to comment on this when a small human appeared around the corner. A child, human. Children are somehow even more fragile than adults, if you can believe it. Soft bones, underdeveloped immune systems, virtually no natural defenses whatsoever. This one couldn't have been more than 8 cycles old, with dark hair pulled back in a tail, and overalls covered in dirt. Mr. Vex, the child called out, running toward us with that peculiar bouncing gait young humans have. Hey there, Emma, Markus waved. Shouldn't you be in the visitor center with your mom? She's talking to Miss Rita about the donation stuff, Emma said, slightly out of breath. Can I see the animals, please? I've been waiting all morning. Markus looked at me. I looked at Markus. This seemed like a terrible idea on multiple levels. I suppose a quick tour wouldn't hurt, he said, as long as you stay close and follow the rules. Emma nodded enthusiastically. I promise. I'll be super careful. We continued the tour, now with an additional tiny, fragile human in tow. Emma asked a million questions, her eyes wide with wonder at every creature we passed. The grizzlies, the wolves, the mountain lions, the elk. Markus answered each question with patience and detail, clearly used to this routine. Then we reached the honey badger enclosure again. Emma pressed her face against the chain link, staring at Napoleon with undisguised fascination. He's so cute. What is he? That's Napoleon, Markus said. He's a honey badger, and he's probably the toughest animal in this entire facility. Tougher than the bears? Pound for pound? Absolutely. Honey badgers don't give up, don't back down, and definitely don't care about the odds. Emma giggled. He's grumpy. Napoleon, perhaps sensing he was being discussed, waddled closer to the fence. I tensed, ready to grab the child if necessary. The badger stopped about a meter away and sat down, still watching us with those calculating eyes. Can I feed him? Emma asked. Not directly, Markus said. But you can toss some treats into his enclosure if you'd like. He handed Emma a small container of what appeared to be raw meat chunks. She carefully opened the container and threw a piece through the fence. Napoleon caught it with surprising speed, chomping down with evident satisfaction. He likes it, Emma squealed with delight. I was about to relax, to think that perhaps this visit wouldn't end in complete disaster, when my datapad began emitting a priority alert. I checked the screen and felt my circulatory fluid run cold. Markus, I said slowly, when was the last structural integrity check performed on these enclosures? He frowned. About 3 months ago. Why? Because according to my scan, the lock mechanism on the honey badger enclosure is failing. The magnetic seal has degraded to approximately 30% efficiency. What? Markus moved toward the gate, examining the lock. That's impossible. I checked this myself just last week. As if the universe itself had decided to prove my point, there was a soft click, followed by the distinct sound of metal scraping against metal. The gate swung open. Napoleon stood in the opening, looking directly at us. The badger tilted its head, as if considering its options. Then it started walking toward us with that distinctive rolling gait that somehow looked both comical and terrifying. Emma, Markus said quietly. Get behind me. Slowly. But Emma, with the fearlessness that can only come from youth and ignorance, didn't move. She stared at the approaching badger, eyes wide but not, I noticed, showing fear. Emma, now. Markus's voice had taken on an edge I hadn't heard before. Napoleon was 5 meters away. 4, 3. I grabbed for Emma's arm, intending to pull her to safety, but she shrugged me off with surprising strength for such a small creature. Wait, she said softly. Look at him. Napoleon had stopped. The badger was sitting again, about 2 meters away, just watching us. Not attacking, not even looking particularly aggressive. Just sitting. He's not mad, Emma said with the confidence of someone who'd lived 8 whole cycles. He's just curious. Emma, honey badgers are extremely dangerous, Markus said, though he'd stopped moving as well, even when they're not trying to be. But you said he was smart, right? Emma slowly crouched down, making herself smaller. And you said he holds grudges. So if someone is nice to him, does he remember that too? I watched, my entire nervous system firing warning signals, as Emma slowly reached into the treat container still clutched in her other hand. She pulled out a piece of meat and very gently tossed it toward Napoleon. The badger caught it, ate it, made that strange chattering sound again, but softer this time. Emma smiled. See, he's just hungry and bored. Being in a cage all day would make anyone grumpy. Enclosure, Markus corrected automatically, though he was staring at the scene before us with something like disbelief. Napoleon moved closer, stopping just a half a meter from Emma. I prepared to activate my suit's emergency protocols, to flood the area with tranquilizer gas if necessary. The badger raised up on its hind legs, sniffing the air, those deadly claws visible even from where I stood. Then it did something I would never have predicted in 1,000 cycles. It laid down, just flopped onto its stomach, front legs stretched out, looking for all the world like a domesticated pet, waiting for attention. Oh, Emma breathed. You're not so scary after all, are you? She reached out, very slowly, and Napoleon didn't move. Her small hand touched the top of the badger's head, scratching gently behind the ears just like Markus had done with the wolf. Napoleon closed his eyes and made a sound I can only describe as a purr mixed with a grunt. Well, Markus said after a long moment of stunned silence, I'll be damned. Language, Emma said without looking away from Napoleon. Miss Rita says you need to work on that. I stood there, my 3 manipulator appendages trembling slightly, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Every piece of data, every bit of training, every instinct I possessed said this should have ended in bloodshed. Honey badgers don't befriend. They don't accept affection. They're living engines of destruction wrapped in impossibly tough skin. Yet here was proof that contradicted everything I knew. "Markus," I managed to say. "What? What just happened?" He shook his head slowly, a grin spreading across his face. "Kid made friends with the most stubborn creature on the planet. That's what happened. But this is scientifically impossible. The creature should be exhibiting aggressive behavior, not accepting physical contact from a smaller organism." "Yeah," Markus said, watching Emma continue to pet Napoleon with gentle strokes. "Humans are pretty good at making impossible things happen." We stood there for perhaps 10 minutes, watching this bizarre interspecies interaction. Eventually, Emma's mother appeared, calling for her daughter. Emma gave Napoleon one last pat, stood up, and backed away slowly. "Bye, Napoleon," she said softly. "I'll come visit you again soon, okay?" The badger watched her go, then stood, shook itself like a dog removing water from its fur, and waddled back toward its enclosure. It paused at the gate, looked back at us once, then disappeared inside. Markus closed and secured the gate, making a note on his personal device. "I'll need to replace this lock immediately." "Markus," I said, "I need to file an incident report about this." He winced. "Yeah, I figured. Look, I take full responsibility. The safety protocols failed, and a dangerous animal got loose. I understand if this affects the facility's standing with the coalition." "No," I said slowly, "you misunderstand. I need to file a report because I just witnessed something that defies every classification system we have. That child demonstrated an ability to communicate with and pacify a creature that our best xenobiologists have categorized as fundamentally hostile to sentient life." "Emma's a special kid," Markus agreed. "But honestly, most human kids are like that. They don't see danger the same way adults do. They just see an animal that might need a friend." I thought about this. About the grizzly bear eating apples from Markus's hand. About the wolf pack pressing against him like pups seeking comfort. About a honey badger, the most notoriously aggressive creature on Earth, accepting affection from an 8-cycle-old human child. "Your species," I said carefully, "treats predators like companions. You form emotional bonds with creatures that should by all rights kill you." "Yeah," Markus said simply. "We call it pack bonding. It's kind of our thing." "Pack bonding," I repeated. "With apex predators. With pretty much anything that'll hold still long enough," he admitted. "We've got people who keep spiders as pets, spiders, and snakes, and lizards, and one guy I know has a pet alligator named Chompers." I felt a headache forming in my primary brainstem. "This is going to require significant revision to our threat assessment protocols." "Probably," Markus said cheerfully. "But hey, at least now you know. Humans don't really do giving up very well, and we don't see why we should be scared of something just because it's got teeth and claws and a bad attitude. Sometimes those are the creatures that need friends the most." We continued the tour, though I spent most of it in a daze, mechanically recording data, while my mind tried to process the implications of what I'd learned. Every enclosure told the same story. Creatures that should be violent and territorial, responding to human interaction with something resembling affection, or at least tolerance. As the sun began to set over the Montana landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that my optical receptors struggled to properly categorize, Markus walked me back to my shuttle. "So," he said, "what do you think? Will we pass the inspection?" I looked at my data pad, filled with observations and recordings that would probably give my superiors on the Coalition Council collective heart failures. "Markus," I said finally, "I think humans are the most terrifying species I've ever encountered." He laughed. "Because we keep dangerous animals?" "No," I said, "because you make them not dangerous." As the shuttle lifted off, carrying me away from that impossible facility and its impossible human caretaker, I couldn't shake one final image from my mind. Emma, tiny and fragile, crouched before Napoleon the honey badger, two creatures that should never have been in the same space, sharing a moment of connection that transcended classification systems and threat assessments. And Napoleon, the meanest, toughest, most uncompromising predator on Earth, looking for all the world like he'd found exactly what he'd been missing. A friend. I had 7 cycles worth of observations to document before I reached Coalition headquarters. Somewhere in that data was the answer to a question that had puzzled xenobiologists since humans first joined the galactic community. How does a species with no natural weapons, no armor, and relatively weak physical capabilities manage to survive on a death world like Earth? The answer, I was beginning to understand, wasn't about surviving at all. It was about making friends with the things that should kill you, and somehow, impossibly, convincing them to be friends back. 6 months later, I found myself back on Earth. This time, the assignment was considerably more complicated. The Coalition Council had reviewed my initial report with what I can only describe as polite skepticism. My supervisor, a multi-tentacled Q's-Theron named Blix, had actually laughed when reading the section about the honey badger incident. "Vorthak," she'd said, her vocal sacs quivering with amusement, "either you've been breathing too much Earth atmosphere, or you're suggesting we completely overhaul 3 centuries of xenobiological classification because a small human touched a grumpy weasel. It's called a honey badger," I'd corrected her. "And yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting." Which is how I ended up on a return trip. This time with a full research team and significantly more sophisticated equipment. The council wanted proof, hard data, reproducible results that could explain this bizarre human ability to, as Markus had put it, make friends with things that should kill them. We landed at a different facility this time, in a region called Alaska. The landscape was breathtaking and hostile in equal measure. Endless forests, jagged mountains, and temperatures that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Humans, naturally, walked around in light jackets like it was a pleasant spring day. Our host was a woman named Dr. Kiera Bowen, a wildlife biologist specializing in large carnivores. She was shorter than Markus, with copper-colored hair tied in braids and a smile that suggested she found the entire universe faintly amusing. "Welcome to the Denali Wildlife Research Station," she announced as our transport touched down. "I've read your preliminary report, Vorthak. Fascinating stuff. Ready to see some real predators?" My assistant, a young Trell named Jix, made a nervous clicking sound. "Define real predators, please." Dr. Bowen's smile widened. "How do you feel about wolves?" Turns out, Alaskan wolves make the ones at Markus's facility look like puppies. These were massive creatures, weighing up to 70 kilograms, with jaws powerful enough to crush bone and coordination sophisticated enough to bring down prey 10 times their size. The pack we were observing numbered 23 individuals, led by a breeding pair Dr. Bowen called Shadow and Frost. "We've been tracking this pack for 4 years, she explained as we watched them from what I desperately hoped was a safe distance. "They've got a territory spanning almost 400 square kilometers. Apex predators in every sense of the word. And you study them how, exactly?" Jix asked, his head crest flattening against his skull in fear. "Oh, we go out there with them, track their movements, document their behavior, occasionally help injured pack members. Standard research protocol." "Standard," I repeated weakly. "You approach creatures that hunt in coordinated packs, possess weapons capable of severing limbs, and have no evolutionary reason to tolerate your presence." "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds dangerous," Dr. Bowen said, laughing. "Come on, let me introduce you. I want to be clear about something. What happened next wasn't recklessness or stupidity. It was calculated, methodical, and based on years of research and experience. But that didn't make it any less absolutely insane from a galactic perspective. Dr. Bowen led us, on foot, into wolf territory. "The key," she said, speaking softly as we walked, and through snow that crunched beneath our boots, "is understanding their communication. Wolves are incredibly social. They have complex hierarchies, emotional bonds, even what we might call culture. If you approach them with respect, acknowledge their social structure, and don't pose a threat, they'll generally tolerate your presence." "Generally," Jix muttered. "That's not exactly reassuring." We found the pack resting in a clearing, scattered across the snowy ground in various states of alertness. Shadow, the alpha male, lifted his head as we approached, his yellow eyes tracking our movement with predatory focus. Dr. Bowen stopped about 15 meters away and sat down in the snow. Just sat down, like she was waiting for a transport. "Now we wait," she said. "Let them decide what to do next." What they did next was something my training said was impossible. One of the younger wolves, maybe 2 years old, stood up and approached us. Not aggressively, not cautiously, but with what I can only describe as curiosity. It came within 3 meters, sniffed the air, and made a soft whining sound. "Hey there, Scout." "Doctor," Bowen said gently. "Brought some new friends today. Be nice." Scout, apparently that was the wolf's name, tilted its head and came closer. It walked right past Dr. Bowen and stopped in front of me. I froze. Every muscle, every fiber, every instinct screamed at me to run, to activate my suit's defensive protocols, to do literally anything except sit there while an apex predator inspected me with its nose. Scout sniffed my biosuit thoroughly, making a series of soft sounds that my translator couldn't interpret. Then, satisfied with whatever criteria wolves use to judge strangers, it simply turned around and walked back to the pack. "Congratulations, Doctor," Bowen said. "You just passed the vibe check." "The what?" "Vibe check. It's a human expression. Means Scout decided you're okay, not a threat, not prey, just another creature sharing space. Wolves are excellent judges of character." Over the next hour, we watched the pack interact. They played, a concept I'd previously associated only with juvenile animals developing hunting skills. But these were adults, fully grown predators, chasing each other through the snow, wrestling and making sounds that were unmistakably joyful. "They're happy," I said, adjusting my recording equipment. "Of course they are," Dr. Bowen replied. "Why wouldn't they be? Bellies are full, pack is healthy, territory is secure. This is a good day for them. But they're predators. Killing machines evolved for one purpose. They're also family," she corrected gently. "That's what people forget. Yes, wolves hunt. Yes, they kill to survive. But they also love, play, mourn their dead, and care for their injured. They're not monsters. They're just wolves." Jix was frantically recording everything, his earlier fear apparently forgotten in the rush of scientific discovery. This is remarkable. The emotional complexity, the social bonds, the willingness to accept alien presence without aggression. It contradicts every model we have for apex predator behavior. "Maybe your models are wrong," Dr. Bowen suggested. "Or maybe Earth predators are just different. Or," I said slowly, "maybe it's the humans that are different." She looked at me with those curious eyes. "What do you mean?" "Every world has predators," I explained. "Every ecosystem has creatures evolved to hunt and kill. But on other worlds, the dominant sentient species either fears them, controls them, or exterminates them. Only humans befriend them. Only humans see a creature designed to kill and think, 'I should be its companion.'" "Huh," Dr. Bowen said thoughtfully. "Never really thought about it that way. We just see animals that need help, protection, or understanding. The dangerous part is kind of secondary." That evening, back at the research station, my team compiled our observations. The data was undeniable. Human interaction with apex predators demonstrated statistically significant reductions in aggressive behavior, increased social tolerance, and what could only be described as affection responses. "It's the pack bonding thing again," Jix said, reviewing his notes. "Humans form emotional attachments with other species at a neurological level. Their brains literally release bonding chemicals when interacting with non-human creatures. But why?" I wondered. "What evolutionary advantage does befriending your planet's deadliest creatures provide?" "Maybe," suggested Dr. Bowen, who'd joined us for dinner, "it's not about advantage. Maybe it's just about not being alone." Before I could respond, an alarm sounded. Not the harsh klaxon of immediate danger, but a steady beeping that indicated an incoming emergency transmission. Dr. Bowen checked her communication device, and her expression shifted from relaxed to focused in an instant. "We've got a situation. There's a tourist group stranded about 30 kilometers north. Bad weather moved in faster than predicted, and their guide broke his leg. Search and rescue can't get a helicopter in until the storm passes." "How long will that take?" I asked. 6, maybe 8 hours. Problem is, they're in prime grizzly territory, and they've got a child with them. If the bears catch their scent and decide to investigate, things could get ugly fast. "Can't the adults protect the child?" Dr. Bowen gave me a look. "Vorthak, these are tourists. Accountants and teachers on vacation, not trained wilderness experts. They'd panic, do something stupid, and people would die. So what's the plan? She was already pulling on her heavy weather gear. I go get them, guide them back here on foot before the bears or the cold kill them. Alone? In a storm? Through grizzly territory? Unless you've got a better idea, she said, checking her pack's contents with practiced efficiency. I looked at Jix. Jix looked at me. We both looked at our sophisticated scanning equipment, our emergency protocols, our detailed threat assessment matrices. Then I heard myself say something incredibly stupid. We're coming with you. Doctor. Bowen raised an eyebrow. You sure? This isn't a research observation. This is a genuine survival situation, which makes it perfect for studying human behavior under stress, I said, already knowing my supervisor was going to kill me for this. Besides, we've got scanning equipment that can detect heat signatures through the storm. We can help. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, gear up, we leave in 10 minutes. The storm hit us about 20 minutes into the trek. Wind that felt like physical blows. Snow so thick I could barely see Dr. Bowen's outline ahead of me, and cold that seeped through my biosuit's thermal protection like it wasn't even there. How do humans survive this? I shouted over the wind. Stubbornness mostly, Dr. Bowen called back. Plus layers, lots of layers. My scanner indicated the tourists were approximately 12 kilometers ahead, huddled in a small depression that provided minimal shelter. They were alive but rapidly losing body heat. We need to hurry, I said, checking the data. Their core temperatures are dropping into dangerous ranges. There's a problem, Jix said suddenly, pointing at his scanner. Large heat signatures, 3 of them, moving toward the tourists from the west. Bears, Dr. Bowen said grimly. Of course it's bears. Probably attracted by the commotion and noise, curious more than hungry, but that doesn't make them less dangerous. Can we reach the tourists before the bears do? She checked her positioning device. Maybe. If we run and don't get eaten ourselves. That's not reassuring. I know. She started running, and despite my better judgment, I followed. We reached the tourists with perhaps 5 minutes to spare. They were exactly as Dr. Bowen described, ordinary humans, terrified and cold, huddled around. An injured man whose leg was bent at an angle that made my circulatory system ache in sympathy. And yes, there was a child, maybe 12 cycles old, with dark skin and eyes wide with fear. Dr. Bowen, one of the adults shouted. Thank God. We thought we were going to die out here. Not today, she said firmly. But we need to move. Now. There are bears in the area, and we don't want to be here when they arrive. Jim can't walk, another adult said, gesturing to the injured man. His leg is badly broken. Then we carry him. Vorthak, Jix, can your suits provide any assistance? My suit had minimal strength augmentation, but it was enough. Between the 3 of us, we managed to get Jim onto an improvised stretcher made from emergency supplies. That's when my scanner started screaming. They're here, I said unnecessarily. The 3 massive shapes emerging from the storm were visible even without technological assistance. Grizzly bears. Even larger than the ones at Markus's facility. Easily 300 kilograms each, with claws that caught the fading light like curved knives. The tourists started panicking, shouting, crying, moving in ways that made the situation exponentially worse. The child grabbed onto her mother, sobbing. Everyone stop. Dr. Bowen's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Stop moving, stop yelling, right now. The authority in her tone was absolute. They stopped. Bears have poor eyesight but excellent hearing, she said, speaking calmly despite the 3 apex predators approaching. Running triggers their chase instinct. Yelling makes you seem threatening. We need to be calm, quiet, and give them space to investigate. Investigate? One of the men squeaked. They're going to kill us. Only if we act like prey, Dr. Bowen said. Vorthak, keep scanning. Tell me if their body language shifts toward aggression. I adjusted my scanner, focusing on thermal patterns and movement analysis. They're curious. Elevated heart rates, but not influencing. Attack mode. Yet, the bears came closer. 2 meters away. 1.5. The largest one, a massive male with a scarred snout, stood on his hind legs, towering over us at nearly 3 meters tall. Dr. Bowen slowly, very slowly, reached into her pack. She pulled out something wrapped in cloth and carefully unwrapped it, revealing chunks of dried fish. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "Offering a peace treaty," she said. Then, to the bear, in a soft, non-threatening voice, "Hey there, big guy. We're not here to cause trouble. Just passing through your territory. Here, have a snack on us." She tossed the fish chunks to the side, away from our group. The bear dropped back to all fours, walked over to the food, and sniffed it carefully. Then he ate it. Just casually ate the offering while his two companions waited their turn. Dr. Bowen tossed more fish, creating a trail that led away from us. The bears followed it, apparently deciding that free food was more interesting than investigating strange creatures in the storm. Within minutes, they were gone, disappeared back into the swirling snow. "That," one of the tourists said shakily, "was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced." "That," Dr. Bowen corrected, "was a negotiation. Bears are smart. They understand trade, food for safe passage. Everyone wins." The trek back took 4 hours. 4 hours of carrying an injured man through a blizzard, keeping a group of frightened tourists calm, and hoping we didn't encounter any more wildlife with negotiation requirements. By the time we reached the research station, I was exhausted in ways I didn't know were possible. My suit's power cells were at 15%, my temperature regulation was barely functional, and I was pretty sure I'd developed 3 new types of system stress. But everyone was alive. The rescue helicopter arrived as the storm cleared. They took Jim and the tourist to a medical facility, leaving us with quiet halls in the aftermath of adrenaline crash. "That was insane," Jick said, collapsed in a chair with his head crest completely flat. "We almost died, multiple times." "But we didn't," Dr. Bowen said, pouring herself something called coffee that smelled like burnt chemicals. "Because we stayed calm and worked together. You bribed bears with fish. I negotiated with bears using fish," she corrected. "There's a difference." I thought about what I'd witnessed. A human woman walking into a storm to save strangers, facing down 3 apex predators with nothing but dried fish and absolute confidence, leading a group of terrified people to safety through sheer force of will. "Dr. Bowen," I said carefully, "why did you do this? You could have waited for official rescue services. It would have been safer." She looked at me like the question didn't make sense. There was a child out there, scared and cold and probably thinking she was going to die. I have training and equipment that could help. Why wouldn't I go? Because it was dangerous. Because you could have died. Because the logical course of action was to minimize risk and wait for proper support, Vorthak, she said gently. Humans don't really do the logical thing when someone needs help. We do the right thing. There's a difference. And there it was. The answer I'd been searching for since my first visit to Earth. Humans didn't befriend apex predators because it was logical or evolutionary advantageous. They did it because they couldn't help themselves. Their brains, their psychology, their entire species was hardwired to form connections, to protect the vulnerable, to see potential friends instead of threats. It wasn't a survival strategy. It was just who they were. The next morning, I submitted my final report to the Coalition Council. It was 300 pages of data, observations, recordings, and analysis. But the conclusion could be summed up in a single paragraph. Humanity represents a unique evolutionary path. Rather than dominating the environment through force or eliminating threats through superior weaponry, they have developed an unprecedented ability to form emotional bonds across species barriers. This pack bonding instinct extends to apex predators, dangerous fauna, and even inanimate objects. While this behavior appears illogical and high risk from a galactic perspective, it has allowed humans to coexist with their planet's most dangerous creatures, turning potential threats into allies and companions. Recommend complete revision of threat assessment protocols for Earth fauna. Further recommend that any galactic species planning extended contact with humans be prepared for attempts to befriend them, regardless of their danger level or digestive compatibility. 3 weeks later, I received a message from Markus Vex. It was a video file, showing the honey badger enclosure at his facility. Napoleon was there, grumpy as ever, chattering at something off camera. Then Emma appeared, now maybe 6 months older, carefully opening the gate with adult supervision. She walked into the enclosure, sat down, and Napoleon immediately waddled over to her. The supposedly most aggressive creature on Earth climbed into her lap like a domesticated pet and fell asleep. Markus's voice came through the audio. "Thought you'd like to see this. Turns out honey badgers can bond with humans. Who knew? Emma visits every weekend now. Her mom says Napoleon has been therapeutic for her anxiety issues. Figured your council might want to update their records. Also, wanted to say thanks. Your report helped us secure additional funding. We're expanding the facility to rescue more animals. Take care out there, Vorthak. And remember, sometimes the scariest things just need a friend." I watched the video 3 times. Each time, I felt something I couldn't quite name. Something warm and uncomfortable, and entirely foreign to my species. I think humans call it hope. Because if a species existed that could look at the universe's most dangerous creatures and see friends instead of threats, maybe they could look at the galaxy's vastly different alien species and see the same thing. Maybe that's what made humans truly terrifying. Not their technology or their weapons or their stubborn refusal to give up. Maybe it was their absolute, unwavering belief that everything, no matter how dangerous or different, deserved a chance at friendship. Even grumpy honey badgers. Especially grumpy honey badgers. I filed the video in my personal archives, next to my official reports and threat assessments and 300 pages of data that would probably revolutionize xenobiology. And then I did something very unprofessional for a senior coalition scientist. I smiled. Because somewhere on Earth, a small human child was napping with a honey badger in her lap, and both of them looked absolutely content. Turns out, humans weren't just good at making friends with dangerous creatures. They were good at teaching the rest of us that maybe, just maybe, danger was a matter of perspective. And sometimes the scariest thing in the universe is realizing that you're not as alone as you thought. You just needed someone stubborn enough to be your friend.